Welcome to the Crushing Defeat podcast. My name is Blake Richards. With me is Dan Burrington.
Hello.
And we are coming to you live, not really. We are coming to you pre-recorded from the cloud. Today we're going to talk North Korea, specifically Mr. Otto Warmbier, who recently confessed to committing a hostile act against the country of North Korea. We've got a couple other interesting things to talk about regarding that country. So, I'm fascinated with North Korea, and I'm trying to think about why, but it's like it's an evil cartoon. And the question Dan, I had for you is, if your parents gave you a country, right? And you were just born into it. You're born into this lineage, and you are part of the most isolated country in the world. And your parents just give you the country. You can do whatever you want, like whatever you want. You know, what would you do? And could you tell me that honestly you wouldn't go a little crazy?
I think I would. I would probably go a little crazy. I mean, you got given that kind of power at that young of an age. How old is he?
He's 33. The youngest. He's the youngest state leader in the world.
Okay. Yeah. I would like to think that I would be a little bit more like Sultan of Brunei, Middle Eastern crazy, where I'm just buying like solid gold limousines and, you know, buying Bengal tigers to put in the back of my Jeep.
Right.
I would like to think that I wouldn't be super scary oppressive, but I mean, it goes back to nature and nurture, I guess. Like, that's how he was brought up. He was brought up in this oppressive regime. I'm not making any excuses for him, but no. I think you should expect that of him from, you know, where he grew up and what he knew growing up as a kid, like what his dad did and what his dad could do and what his family meant. Because everybody in North Korea thinks that his dad was born under a sacred mountain. Right. There's all this other shit like
they don't go to the bathroom.
They don't go to the bathroom. Yeah. The first time he went golfing, he scored a hole-in-one twice.
Nice.
And some of the people believe it.
Yeah.
And
a lot of the people believe it.
His kid might believe it, you know?
Yeah.
So if you buy your own press and you think that your family is the chosen one, like you have some almost, I mean, they go short of calling themselves gods, basically, then yeah, I think that you would get to the point where you would be like almost drunk with power and think, you know, this is something I want to do. And since I'm the supreme being or the closest thing around to it and I can do whatever I want without repercussions, I'm going to do it. That being said, I would hope that like my internal self would be able to slow that down, but who knows?
So it's this cult of personality that they have around their leadership, and it's amazing. And I think all of the horrible things that they do overshadow what makes it kind of interesting. So the famine or the executions of family members who were, you know, convicted of treason, that type of thing, overshadows us being able to talk about some of the more interesting things. So let's get into some of that. But first, a little bit of North Korea fun facts, if you will.
If you will.
Yeah. So here's some standard facts. We'll start there. North Korea is officially known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or the DPRK. They're bordered by China and Russia to the north and South Korea to the south. I thought this was kind of interesting. They have 46,541 square miles of land. Michigan, where we're at, is 96,716 miles. So this country is half the size of Michigan, just to kind of put that out there.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective.
Yep. Terrain's very mountainous, and their highest peak is Mount, I'm not going to try to Pikachu Mountain, a volcano that's 9,003 feet above sea level. It's volcanic, but we don't have to worry about that they don't have to. The last eruption was 946 AD.
That means it's time, man. It's primed.
You're right. It is
biting.
It's time to explode. The climate, oddly enough, is also a lot like Michigan. They have 4 distinct seasons with snow in the winter and hot, humid summers. Like I said, much like we are here. The 2013 population estimate was just under 25 million people, making it the 48th most populous country in the world. The capital of Pyongyang, the population was, this is kind of interesting. So I'm going to sidebar here for a second. Information about North Korea can be hard to come by, and it usually comes from a few sources, few of which can be trusted. So one is the North Korean state government themselves, which we know is a propaganda machine. Another is the Daily NK, which is a newspaper that was started a while back, I think in the 80s, by South Koreans. And they have family members and informants in North Korea that they get in phone conversations with about what's going on there. So a lot of the international media uses the Daily NK for their info, and they actually have an English translated site. So if anyone goes to the dailynk.com, you can see that online newspaper translated. It's kind of interesting. And they'll have news things like your small town newspaper, Billy scores gold in state football finals. It's like that level of story sometimes. But they've also been known to break a lot of major stories. And then you've got, whatever the international media can get from people visiting there. But we know that anyone who goes into that country they're monitored and are watched, and they're shown a very specific image of North Korea that the government wants you to see. So why am I saying all this? Why am I going through all this? Well, I was about to talk about the population of Pyongyang, and depending on the source, it's somewhere in between 2.5 million people and 3.25 million people, depending on somewhere in that million odd people range.
What's the population of the country again?
It's 25 million people. So what's that? 10%?
All right, yeah.
Yeah, 10% live in Pyongyang, and specifically the elite get to live there. So it's kind of like Utopia or Atlantis, right? Everyone who's anybody, according to the government, gets to live in Pyongyang. GDP per capita also ranges wildly based on the source. On the low end, I found it was $621 per person per year, up to $1,800 per person per year. So that's not a lot of lettuce per person. North Korea has labeled itself a socialist state, but is typically regarded as a totalitarian dictatorship under the Kim dynasty. They have the 4th largest military in the world with regards to personnel. There are 9.4 million total individuals in the North Korean army, or close to half the population is in some fashion part of the military. Their active duty army is 1.2 million individuals. They do possess nuclear weapons, and recently, last month, completed their 4th underground nuclear test. This has greatly upset the international community, and in a rare joint effort, it was just announced, this is actually pretty big news today, that the U.S. and China have put forth the toughest sanctions ever for North Korea. These sanctions are extremely tough, and they include measures like banning all coal exports from the country, which when combined with other rare minerals make up a large part of their economy. The government's dominated by a single party, the WPK, or Workers' Party of Korea, and the practice of what's called Juche, Juche. This is something that Kim Il-sung came up with, who was the first of the Kim dynasty. And basically, Juche means self-reliance. So if you think about this from a cultural standpoint, North Korea is all about being self-reliant. Even if it causes a famine where thousands of their people die, it took them forever even to allow humanitarian aid in when that famine happened. So they're very much about being self-reliant. So those are some of the boring facts. Fair?
Fair enough.
All right, cool. Now, the Kim dynasty, interesting thing about Korean names, and you probably know this, but the last name goes first.
Yeah.
So Kim Il-sung, Kim is like the last name, right? All right, so the first, let's go back to World War II. World War II ends 1948. The Soviet Union, or for you millennials out there, Russia, took North Korea on as like their, champion, right? And then the United States took South Korea on. South Korea is now a democratic country. It does quite well, and North Korea is crazy people. Do with that information what you will. Anyway, so 1948, Kim Il-sung, known as the Great Leader, takes over North Korea and starts this whole idea of Juche and the idea of self-reliance and ultimately the cult of personality around his family. So he is in charge until his death in 1994 when his son Kim Jong-il took power, and he kept power until his death on December 17, 2011. And now we have Kim Jong-il, who has been the supreme leader since then. What's interesting about that is Kim Jong-un is the new one. Kim Jong-un is third. He's the third brother, right? He wasn't first in line. But the other two were considered not a good match. So let me read what I put here.
Was it because they didn't have the haircut?
And I think that was a big part of it, because there are 28 state-approved haircuts that you have to follow in that country, and I don't think they had one of them. But the Kim Jong-un haircut right now is the most popular, which is pretty cool. Kim Jong-un took power on December 29, 2011, following his father's death. He is the third eldest son of Kim Jong-il. His two older brothers were considered black sheep, unfit for rule. The reasons for this included they were too reserved, they were troublemakers, they were not masculine enough, and finally, something to do with a plot to visit Tokyo Disneyland in 2001.
I remember hearing about that, yeah.
Yeah, that was bad news. So Kim Jong-nam, the oldest brother, or oldest son, did not get to be in charge because he wanted to go to Disneyland.
Still alive, though?
Yeah, he lives in, I think they said China. Yeah, he's in China.
So I wonder if that's some kind of weird exile.
I don't know, but if you could, all right, you're in charge of a country, you can do whatever you want, or Disneyland.
Disneyland?
Probably. So anyway, like we said before, Kim Jong-un, known as the supreme leader and the marshal, at age 33 is the world's youngest state leader. All right, so that's a little bit of background about the Kim dynasty and a little bit about North Korea. Let's talk about some funny, or more, maybe not funny, all of them, but some more interesting North Korea facts. North Korea bases its calendar on Kim Il-sung's date of birth. So on April 15th, it will be year 104 for them. Elections occur every 5 years, and you have one option to choose from. So
that's an option, though, right?
Yeah, you get to pick you or yourself.
Nice.
Yeah, which is pretty sweet.
But I'm sure they have write-ins. You can definitely write in.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
All right. North Korea has the world's largest stadium, bigger than anywhere else. It holds more than 150,000 people, and it's called the Rungnado-mae Stadium. I don't know, have you ever seen the big North Korean shows where it's all like they're dancing and doing things in sync and they're waving signs and
Yeah, like the propaganda dancing bear.
Yeah. That's where all that goes on apparently. All right. They also have a 3-generation of punishment rule. So they have work camps, they have labor camps that people are sent to when they get in trouble or commit crimes. So you got to go there and, break rocks or whatever, make things or farm, I don't know, whatever. And with the 3 generations of punishment rule, if you get in trouble, your grandparents, parents, and children will also be sent to the work camp with you. Because the thought is if you're a criminal, then your whole family must be criminals, so everyone gets to go to the work camp. Well, it's
probably also like, if you care about your family, you'll do as we say.
Something like that. But the propaganda machine...
Yeah.
The propaganda machine is also in effect there. But they have 200,000 prisoners in work camps currently, which is a lot. The North Korean version of Godzilla is called Pulgasari and was made after Kim Jong-il saw the original. Kim Jong-il loves his movies. So when I asked you before, if you would go crazy or what you would do if, you were given that kind of power, Kim Jong-il had huge movie theaters, and his goal was to get every movie ever made on recording. I would probably do something like that.
Well, he kidnapped South Korean actors and had them act. And then there was another guy. He was a prisoner of war. He was an American. I don't know his name, but they turned him into a movie star, and he basically became the asshole American. Anytime they needed an asshole American general or, a bad capitalist pig, whatever, it was this guy, and he became this giant movie star, and he lived the rest of his life in North Korea as a celebrity. I don't know how long he was in prison before he became this movie star, but that was his thing. That's what he subsisted on.
Yeah, I remember hearing about the directors and stuff being kidnapped, but that's interesting about the American. I wonder if it's, if you were to ask him if he would want to leave, if he would. Probably not.
I'm sure they made it pretty cushy.
Yeah. Kim Jong-il's body is preserved in a glass tomb for anyone to see, and is apparently the country's most popular attraction is to go see Kim Jong-il's body preserved in a glass jar. Tomb. They are...
he's very tiny.
Yeah, he's a little guy. Kim Jong-un loves basketball. Kim Jong-un loves basketball. He recently had Dennis Rodman in. There's this really cool documentary called Big Bang in Pyongyang, and it's about Dennis Rodman's trip there and how Dennis Rodman got so drunk that he messed everything up. It's awesome. You have to watch this.
I don't think there was a situation where Dennis Rodman was going to show up in North Korea and suddenly do diplomatic wonders. Right. If he was sober the whole time, it's not like, guess what, guys? They're taking all their bombs down. I talked them out of it.
Yeah.
That was going to go sideways regardless.
It was, but I just love the spectacle of that documentary because you've got all the other former NBA stars there trying to make it civilized and peaceful and professional, and they're all worried about their sponsors and their careers, and Dennis Rodman's just an earthquake through the whole thing, just wrecking everything. I love it. But anyway, some of their crazy basketball rules. So if you get a nothing but net three-pointer, that's 4 points in North Korea. Nothing but net, no rim, three-point shot, you get an extra point. If you miss a free throw, you actually lose. Yeah, they shoot you. Oh. Yep. And you lose a point. So if you make the free throw, you get a point. If you miss it, you lose a point.
I'm not really down with North Korea in any way, shape, or form, but I think that's an interesting rule. I'd like them to try that out. Just try it out at the college level.
Yeah, I think both of those are cool rules. The nothing but net 3-4-pointer.
Mm-hmm.
North Korea has 3 TV channels. They're all state-run, obviously. 2 are only available on the weekends, and the other one's only available in the evenings. And I looked up because I wanted to compare it to the U.S. And the average American with cable, I get most of us are on, or a lot of us are on a Netflix or whatever type of kick at this point. But the average American with cable has 189 channels on their TV versus 3 state-run ones in North Korea. The other thing about Americans is we may have an average of 189 channels, but we watch, on average, only 17. Fun fact. But it makes me wonder, what do they do in their spare free time?
Well, if you think about it, when we were kids in the 80s, we had 3 channels. We had ABC, CBS, and NBC, and that was it.
Yeah.
And that was enough back then, and we had PBS. So I would get down on Reading Rainbow on PBS, and then, you had your other ones for the blockbuster shows, and you had your show and you watched it. It's probably similar to that, but I'm guessing most of it is just force-fed bullshit.
Yeah.
People find time, because there was a time before TV too, but I'm guessing the status that country's in, most of their time is spent working.
At the work camps.
At the camps, just producing so that the country doesn't go under.
Yeah.
They need to farm. They need to, that's I looked up while you were talking, California has a population of 40 million.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that, 25% more? Yeah,
well, it's
25, 30% more
yeah.
than they do. But they're in a country that's half the size of Michigan. California is a big-ass state,
mm-hmm.
and it's still fairly heavily populated. You're talking about a very tiny country with a fairly high population. That's got to be tough on food supply.
Mm-hmm.
Plus you're running everything. If you have that big of an army, you got to feed that army. You got to feed dudes that are just chilling out and they're not producing anything. All they're doing is like polishing the 2 jets that they own. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so what really got me going on North Korea is you've heard of Vice News, right? They're on HBO now. So back before Vice News was on HBO, they did a lot of YouTube documentary type stuff, and I would watch everything that they came up with. And they had a pretty big deal on North Korea, and that's what got me interested in it. And more than anything else that I've seen, they had the outside Pyongyang type footage. So what you see inside North Korea is a lot of heavily state-controlled inside Pyongyang where the elite live type of footage. But what you don't see, to your point, is what the other 22-odd million people are doing outside of that city. And it would show guys in military uniforms, and the uniforms were just baggy, like super baggy because they were so gaunt. And North Korea would say it was because they were so fit, but you could tell it was just because they didn't have enough nutrition. So it's, that piece, it's interesting and it's kind of sad, but I would really like to see, what's outside Pyongyang, what goes on in the Grand Rapids of North Korea. You know what I mean?
Is there a Grand Rapids of North Korea, or is it just tiny villages,
I don't know. There's cities on the map that are marked, but I don't know. You don't know anything about them.
True.
So they've got 3 TV channels. According to the CEI's definition of literacy is if you can read and write and you're 15 years of age or older. That's literacy according to the CIA in this country. And according to that definition, North Korea has a 100% literacy rate. Students are required to pay for their own desk, chair, and all other basic school supplies, including heating oil. Basically, the only thing that's provided by the state in North Korea is the teacher and the building, and that's it. And they have a 100% literacy rate. That's kind of crazy. As we talked about, there are 28 state-approved haircuts, and some of them are based on if you're married, if you're not. If you're a woman and you're married, you have to have shorter hair. If you're not married, you can have longer hair.
Is that because it's sexier to have longer hair?
I guess.
Like if you've got sexy hair.
Yeah, I think it is.
You're married, you can't do that.
Yeah.
That's too sexy. Cut it.
Done.
Stop.
You're out of the game. North Korea requires you to turn in your poop.
How often?
I have no idea, but they require you to turn in your poop for fertilizer. They use it to fertilize their crops.
I've heard of countries, and I think that this is maybe in Laos or Thailand, but they use septic underneath their house to heat. Like it's like a biodegradable, like something about, the human waste going in with other things, the biodegradation of that makes heat. It's almost like a geothermic type thing, but it's not geothermic. But actually using human waste for fertilizer, that's gross.
Yeah.
That's gross and bad.
And you have to. You get in trouble if you don't turn in your poop.
Is it like a bucket?
I have no idea.
How do you hand it in? This is, of all the things that you've talked about, this is the thing that's piqued my interest.
That's why it's the last of the strange facts, because I knew it was the best one. I also know the least about it.
Well, I really want to know now. Is it like a bell jar?
Probably.
Is it like a...
I would assume that at most places they have to have sewer systems, but at a lot of the smaller places they probably don't. So is it probably an outhouse that olden outhouses like George Washington, right, had this amazing outhouse that you could go around behind and pull like a shelf out of his poop.
Yeah.
And there's probably something like that where the farmers go around, they pull out the drawer or whatever of poop, and then they go and dump it on the corn or whatever. But in the city, they probably have, normal sewer where, because you're part of the elite, you don't have to worry about your poop. They just take it from you.
That's being part of the elite. So I have somebody for my poop. They take my poop for me.
That's exactly right.
If you're like low rent though, like what if you don't poop a lot? Can you just do it? Can you just get like a plastic sack and just keep that? I mean, I'm fascinated by this.
They probably would ask you at some point, like let's say you're the yellow house on the block and you haven't turned in poop in 2 weeks.
Yeah, what if you're constipated? What if you're super constipated and they come knocking at your door and you have to go to the work camps because you didn't provide...
3% of all the work camp prisoners are because they did not meet their poop quota.
Fuck you. That's not true.
It should be true. But yeah, required. Turn in your poop. All right. So last thing I want to talk about with North Korea was Otto Frederick Warmbier. All right. So Otto Frederick Warmbier decides that for New Year's, he's going to North Korea.
Okay.
And, a lot of the news talks about his church and things like that. So I don't know. I mean, in my mind, I imagine he goes there to party like it's 1999 and spend New Year's in North Korea. But given all the talk about his connections with his church and stuff like that, I don't see that as being the reason. I haven't seen anything about why he went to North Korea. But Otto ends up in North Korea. And whether you take North Korea's stance, which is that the United States government put him up to it, or you take the stance that he's admitted to or stated that his church put him up to it, or in my opinion, I think he's just a young guy who decided to try to do this and pull it off. But basically at the hotel that he was at, the Ngakto Hotel, known for housing international people, in a staff-only area of the hotel, there was a propaganda banner. No one said what the banner states that I've found, but I imagine it to be something like, work hard every day and good things will happen. I don't know, something like that, right? Some propaganda banner to tell you what to do. So Otto goes into the staff-only area and he throws this banner in his suitcase. As he's leaving North Korea, the North Koreans find this banner in his luggage, right?
Okay.
So I guess the comparison would be as if you were in New York for New Year's and you stole the Budweiser banner that they had behind the bar and the TSA found it in your suitcase at the airport. Fair? Mm-hmm. All right. So they find this banner and they arrest him for committing a hostile act against the country of North Korea. So it's stuff like this that makes it wildly interesting, is that this young kid takes a banner from a hotel and it's a criminal act against the country, against, the state. Where here, and in most countries, it would be not newsworthy at all. But because it was an evil imperialist American in North Korea, this is international news. So they arrest him, and that was on January 2nd. And just recently, a couple of days ago, no one had heard from this guy. Didn't know what was going on with Otto for the past month, almost 2 months. Everyone's all freaking out, worried, asking. I think Switzerland is the country we use as kind of a go-between the U.S. and North Korea to help us get him out of prison. Here we're going to play a brief clip of Otto during his confession of a hostile act against the state of North Korea.
On December 27, 2015, I alone arrived in Beijing and spent 2 days looking around the city. On December 29, 2015, I met my tour group at the Beijing International Airport. That afternoon, we arrived at the Pyongyang International Airport and we checked into the Yangakdo International Hotel. While in Pyongyang, I prepared additionally for my crime. On the morning of December 30th, 2015, I asked my UK tour guide where they keep the important slogans in the Yangakdo International Hotel. She said they are in staff-only areas. That night, I alone walked around the second floor lobby. After this press conference, my family will come to know about my current situation. I am very worried that they may be harmed, and like I was manipulated by the United States administration. I am worried that they may be threatened or harmed from the government. I beg for any kind of public protection for my family. One final time, I beg for forgiveness. I never should have allowed myself to be allured by the United States administration to commit a crime in this country. I wish that the United States administration never manipulate people like myself in the future to commit crimes against foreign countries. North Korea, for forgiveness, so that I may return home to my family. And my Lord, if you are there, please save this poor and innocent scapegoat.
All right, so what you saw there, or heard there, this is a podcast, you can't see, you can hear. You could see in your mind's eye.
That's true, in your mind's eye, you saw.
What you saw in your mind's eye was Otto crying, but you could probably pick this up from the audio. You can definitely pick it up from the video, is that it's kind of like a child actor crying in a movie. You know, that, like that, right?
Yeah.
You want to give it a try?
No, you did well enough for the both of us.
Yeah. Please forgive me, North Korea. You know, that. And then it just cuts and he's normal again, right? So he's like, and what I would like to say, you know, just like that. And so he begs Korea for forgiveness, saying he's made the worst mistake of his life, yada, yada, yada. But I love where it gets into the part where you can just tell he's been coached. He's been coached exactly what to say. And the reason you know he's been coached exactly what to say is because you can tell when something's been translated from Korean to English and none of those strange grammar things have been ironed out.
Yeah.
So like when he says, I've been very impressed by the Korean government's humanitarian treatment of severe criminals like myself and their very fair and square legal procedures in the DPR Korea. And then he goes on to talk about what you heard. I don't know if you picked up on this, but the way he has been asked to make this confession is that he premeditated this with the United States government before going into Korea. So what the propaganda machine wants you to believe is that Otto got together with, I don't know, the CIA, and they said, all right, Otto, what I want you to do is when you get into North Korea, I want you to go to the hotel and I want you to steal a banner from the hotel. And that's really, really going to mess with the North Koreans. Like, it's going to ruin their morale.
Stick it to them, yeah.
Yeah, done, right? Because us or the Americans or the United States government, we're super evil and super smart. That's what we would come up with.
Have you seen our banner collection?
Yeah, it must be. It must be in Area 51. I don't know, but
that's
yeah.
Not Obama, man. He does. He's got a closet with like 50 banners in it, all from North Korea, and he just goes in there and rolls in it at night, helps him sleep. All those North Korean banners.
That's got to be it.
I need my fix. Get me a banner, Otto. Thank you.
The one I don't have is from the Ngakto.
I want a blue one.
From the Ngakto Hotel. that talks about washing your hands before you return to work or whatever.
Yeah, you got to complete the set. You have to have all of them.
Yeah, got to. It's like McDonald's toys. But anyway, so he talks about it like it was premeditated, and that he went in there and committed his heinous act of taking this banner and then tried to say that he paid for it and then ended up in prison for 2 months. Could you imagine if someone here ended up in prison for over 2 months for taking a banner from a hotel?
No, I can't. But do you remember, again, going back to when we were kids, time machine, do you remember that kid in Singapore? I think he, and I could be wrong about this, but I think he made some graffiti. It was an American kid in Singapore, made some graffiti, got caught, and they have capital punishment over there in a big, big way. They do not like crime. You can't even spit on the sidewalk. So his punishment was caning. I don't know, he had like 12 strikes from this cane. And it's supposedly like super, super painful to be caned. Mm-hmm. There was this huge international incident. They're like, don't cane our boy. But at the same time, I was thinking, you know that you're in a foreign country. You got to watch what the hell you do. If you go to a country that's run by a crazy person, the last thing I'm thinking is like, if you're going to steal something, steal some towels or a robe like a normal person. Don't steal this propaganda poster that they're going to go through your bags. It's North Korea. There's no way you're leaving that country and they're not going to fleece you to make sure that you don't have anything on you that you shouldn't have. Right. That you don't have some kind of photo of, bare cupboard supermarkets or, a photo of a military guy beating up on, somebody helpless, like something like that. They're going to go through all of your stuff to make sure you don't have that. So The fact that this guy did it, I feel for him. He's in a bad way right now, but he's also stupid.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think it would go on World's Dumbest Criminals for sure. That's not something you would want to commit any type of petty crime in that country.
Long story short, don't go to countries that are run by crazy people.
I want to go there. No.
Don't do that.
I want to go there.
No.
I totally want to go there. I would love to go there and see what it's like. It's just so interesting to me. And I don't know, so this is what I boil it down to, is why it's so weird. The Kim dynasty, right? So you've got this totalitarian dictatorship, basically, that tries to say that they're socialist, but they name themselves democratic. So that should give you a clue right there about what it's going to really be like. And then you've got this dynasty of Kims who basically can do whatever they want. But here's where it's really different. The government is not only in control of healthcare, food, everything, from a business standpoint, they're also in charge of everything from a culture standpoint. And I think, in my opinion, that's what makes North Korea the way it is because the government under the Kim dynasty is in charge of the culture. So if you were to imagine Obama in charge of American culture, that's what it would be like. I don't even want to go anywhere with that. But that's what makes it so interesting. And now you've got a new leader in there, a young leader, that's making the culture more about young things, which hopefully will at some point help with international relations. But then they've got all this nuclear testing that they're doing, and they're launching satellites into space. And that's what the dichotomy of it that makes it, that I struggle with at least, is on the one hand, look, I get it. They're evil. They put people in work camps. They had a famine that really was the government's fault that killed a bunch of people. They have really strict laws. But then there's just this really interesting parts where they've got these huge synchronized dance shows with more people in a stadium larger than anywhere else in the world. And
well, yeah, it's a show. That's a show of power. That's the whole idea is how can we be a poor country? You say that we're a poor country. Look, I just put on this show with, 1,000 dancers all wearing red sequin dresses. Mm-hmm. The northern part of my country can't eat this month, but I put on this super awesome show. That's what those are all about.
But it's like the movie. What's the movie called? The North Korea movie.
Oh, the interview?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where at the end they all get in the tank and same type of thing, right? Let's go drive around in a tank. But I don't know, only in North Korea can you do that. Like, only in North Korea, and if you're one of the Kims, can you go just jump in a tank and drive it around and shoot stuff, right? And
Schwarzenegger has a tank.
So anyway, with North Korea, back to the original question, if I were to answer it, yeah, I would absolutely go crazy if I, from my father, got a country and could do whatever I want. And I have no idea what I would do. But here's the question to anyone out there listening to this. If you go to our website, crushingdefeat.com, and you go to the blog page, we will ask you, the listener out there, what you would do if you were named part of the Kim dynasty and were handed the keys to the kingdom and could do whatever you want. Would you save the country? Would you save the people? Would you make sure everyone was fed? Would you start positive international relations with other countries? Or would you have the largest movie collection on the planet, do underground nuclear tests?
Are we asking people, like, if they were born into it or if they just showed up today?
You could say either, but I'm interested in what people think they would do if they were born into it, because that's what really happened.
Yeah.
Right? That's the real world that the North Koreans are in, is they're under an individual who's born into that kind of power, even being third in line because of Tokyo Disneyland. So that's what we've got in North Korea. Kind of interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there's some good there. I'll be interested to see if Otto makes his way out of it.
Okay. I think that we have slaughtered this enough to the point where we can go on to our Crushing Defeat segment.
Okay. So what we're going to talk about today is we each have a video game that we're bringing to the table, and then anyone listening to this can go to crushingdefeat.com, go to the blog. Today's first episode is called, you know what it's called?
I have no idea.
You named it.
I did?
It's called The Crushing.
Oh my God.
So episode 1's The Crushing. And you can go on there under the Crushing blog and vote on which of these two games you think is better. I'll start. My game is called Lifeline. And there's like Lifeline 1, Lifeline 2, and then there's another one of them too. And it's for mobile platforms. So you can get it for Android, you can get it for iOS, maybe even Windows Mobile, I have no idea. Maybe BlackBerry even.
I think BlackBerry can use Android now, right?
Yeah, so that would work. But basically, it's like an old text adventure game, but it uses text messaging within the app. So you're Taylor, you're this guy out in space, and I won't spoilerific it up, but what I love about this game is, one, it's accessible to anyone, and two, it appeals to that same part of you inside that, gets a little bit excited when your phone goes off, like, ooh, who is that? Who's messaging me? Well, you get messaged the storyline from Taylor.
So let me stop you. Do I get, does the game message me and I go into the game to see this, or do I get a legit text message from Taylor?
It's actually in the game, but it's like a messaging list.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it's within the game app. It would be sweet if it was like legit through the text messaging app. At least that's what I thought it'd be at first, but it's enough of an amalgam to where, it still has that same level of feeling. And you can determine whether or not the messages come in chunks or whether they come in one at a time. One at a time, literally, your phone's going off all the time. So I picked to do it in chunks. But basically, it's like choose your own adventure via text messaging, via this game. And that's why it's called Lifeline, because he's reaching out to you for a lifeline. And you tell Taylor what to do, and the decisions you make determine what ends up happening to Taylor. And there's a bunch of different endings, that type of thing. I'm actually in the second game now. And there's a part where, and this isn't too much of a spoiler, where I decided to pick up an ice pack. And you didn't have to. Just, do you want to pick up the ice pack? It just seemed very generic. But then later on in the game, it made this big impact. So it's stuff like that I really like about the game. The fact that it's something I can do anytime at any point in the day. So you'll make a few decisions for Taylor in a row. And then he'll go off and do something for a couple hours. And then 2-3 hours later, your phone will go off again or whatever. And you've got a new update from Taylor.
So is this supposedly like real time that this is happening then?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the thought, is like Taylor's off in space somewhere and you're the only one he has contact with. And so you're helping him through this adventure. You're making decisions for him. So again, it's called Lifeline. It's available on mobile platforms. You can find it in the Play Store or in the Apple Store, App Store. They
if
run
you can
like
tell, neither of us are Apple people.
It costs like $1 or $2 for the game, so it's accessible to anybody. It's fun. The adventure is the story is interesting, and you end up caring about Taylor by the end of it. So that's my, I guess, submission for video game of the week, or this week's Crushing Defeat.
Okay, all right. It does sound interesting. My game is for PC. It's called Papers, Please. It's been around for probably a year now, and some people might have heard of it. It's kind of turned into an indie darling game, but it's strange. You basically play a border guard or a bureaucratic worker at a border entry point in this country, and you're letting people into your country. There's a country outside of yours where horrible things are happening, and in your country things are relatively better. So every day when you start the game, there's a huge line. This is going to sound boring, but it gets better. There's a huge
bored,
line.
sorry.
Oh man. Huge line of people waiting to get into your country, and then the game starts and somebody comes up, you see their picture, it's all low resolution graphics, and basically you have to match their passport to them, ask them some questions regarding their passport and them to make sure that they're legit, and then get them through into your country. And the first day that you do this, it's basically just a match game. So you're obviously 4'11", you're not 6'3" like your passport says, denied. You match all of the things on your passport, approved. People go through, and day 2 is similar to that, but you have somebody that is saying, I really need to go get through. My mother's on the other side. I need to see her. Sorry, no, denied.
So are you the TSA agent, or are you the person trying to get through?
You're the TSA guy. You're the guy, you literally have a stamp that says allow, and you have a stamp that says deny, and that's the only interaction that you have at that point, is like you mouse over to the allow stamp or the deny stamp, and then you stamp their passport after you're done asking all your questions. The game gets really interesting when you start seeing the same people come day after day, and you start to learn their story, and you start to learn how horrible their country is.
So like North Korea?
Like North Korea. And you have to make the decision if you're going to let these people in or not. And you get penalized for the false positives that you let through, to the point where you can easily lose the game by letting too many people through. So you can't be the guy that lets everybody through. You'll just lose, and then literally what would happen in the real world is you go someplace else, you might get kicked out of the country for all I know. And then another bureaucrat takes over your spot. So the idea is to do kind of as much good as you can and still maintain your level of employment as you do it. And it's kind of depressing, kind of an emotional game, but there's nothing else out there that I've played like it before. It's kind of got like a Russian feel to it. It's almost like it's like a parable, trying to teach you a story. It's $10 on Steam, I believe, but it's one of those that constantly goes on sale. So if you're on when the Steam sales are going on, you can get it for $5 or $3. I would recommend it to anybody that is bored of, like classic shooters and things like that, and they want to try something very new and very unique.
I think what's interesting about both the games is they're both, neither of them are the typical, and I think that's what's really grabbing people's attention right now, are what kind of creative ways can we use video games as emotional entertainment devices. Who would have thought being or playing a TSA simulator would be interesting, but it sounds pretty fun. So, good one. And what's it called again?
Papers, Please.
Papers, Please. Like, hey, papers, please. All right, and then the other game was called Lifeline. So So those are the two games. You can go to crushingdefeat.com into the blog under episode 1, the crushing, and you can go to crushingdefeat.com under the blog section under episode 1, the crushing. I can't even say it.
The crushing.
The crushing. Crush. The crushticle.
Oh, the crushticle could be one too.
That would be sweet, right? Yeah. I've been thinking there's all kinds. They've all got to be crushed to something, right? Some version of that. And vote. You can go to crushingdefeat.com under episode 1, the crushing, and vote for which game you feel earned this week's Crushing Defeat. Again, my name is Blake Richards. With me is Dan Burrington.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening. Talk to you later. That's it.